The views and opinions expressed by guests on this show are those of our guests, not necessarily ours. We are interested in presenting different viewpoints and strive to be neutral parties. We leave it up to you to make your own judgments. Welcome to Vision Chat, a podcast about spiritual topics, with your hosts, Virginia and Stine.
Welcome back to Vision Chat. In this episode, Virginia and I are interviewing Jennifer Solarte. Jennifer is an author, entrepreneur, trauma recovery coach, Reiki master, somatic practitioner, and speaker who is passionate about helping women living their best life after trauma and abuse. She is the founder of the nonprofit organization And Rise, whose mission is to empower women to be the ultimate version of themselves no matter their adversities. Jennifer has years of experience working with survivors and provides trauma-informed care to those she works with. Jennifer is a passionate advocate for all women and offers prevention education to help empower and educate women on healthy relationships, red flags, and healthy coping skills. So thank you for being here and joining us, Jennifer.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Will you start off telling a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Jennifer Solarte, and I'm the founder of And Rise. And the reason I started this organization was because I basically created a bunch of programs that I needed myself, being a survivor, and I didn't receive anything. Back then, I didn't even know that there was nonprofits and different agencies out here that provided these services. So I created, this nonprofit to help women who are either escaping domestic violence or trying to heal and work through their trauma. I've been on my healing journey for a really long time now, and I know what it's like to kind of be on like the traumatic side of trauma, but I also know what it's like to be on the other side. I never say that I'm 100% healed. I don't know that I ever will be. I feel like it's a lifelong journey, but it's been an amazing journey, and I love that I'm able to help other women by just being vulnerable and just sharing the things that I've been through, both good and bad, because my story isn't all just, positive and greatness. A lot of it, I did a lot of bad things too on my end. And just to give you a little bit more background, I was a single mom. As soon as I told her dad I was pregnant, he took off. So I was on my own physically, financially, emotionally, mentally, and it was really, really rough. And I was also $25,000 in credit card debt. I lived in a bad neighborhood where there was like drugs and shootings and gang issues and a lot of stuff like that. And it was really, I call those years like my rock bottom years, because they were like the most depressing years of my life. They were really, really hard. And but my motivator was my daughter. I was just like, I finally got to this point where I was just like, wait a minute, this can't be life. There has to be more to this. It can't just be struggle and depression and sadness and just like all these negative things. So I just decided, I was like, this is not going to work for me, and I'm going to do something different with my life. But it took a while to get to that point where I decided that I was done being in victim mentality and done, feeling sorry for myself. And there also came a point where I was like, you got to take accountability for the things that you've also done, the decisions that you've made that led up to these things happening or to this point, So it was a very big, like, kind of epiphany for me once I got to that point. And then by the time I was 30 years old, I was 100% debt free. I started investing in real estate as a single mom. And then I started an Airbnb business. And then I started And Rise a few years later. So, that's kind of what set up my entrepreneurial journey. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but, it's led me to here and today. And I really do love the work that I do. And now I work with survivors, like I said, and just really helping them cope with healthy coping skills. I believe in holistic wellness, although I do think that sometimes medication is necessary, but I believe the majority of the time it's not, and that we have the tools within us to help heal ourselves. But as we know, society wants us to just take a pill for this and take a pill for that, instead of just like using the tools that God gave us to use, like meditation and things like that.
Jennifer, I want to share a little background with our audience just of how you came on the show, because it is very special. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I met you actually at an event that was for, I mean, I can't even find all the words to describe it. It was just a group of Latina women getting together and really creating this safe space, this beautiful, welcoming, supportive community. And this was created by actually a good friend of mine and someone who's also been on the show, Yesenia Maldonado, with her two very powerful, super amazing women that also came together and created this series of events, community. So this was the second meeting that they had, and you were one of the panelists that was speaking that night. And I was just so moved by your story of the abuse and all the difficulty, but just also the inspiration. I think that you just gave everyone in the room of how you just came through it all and succeeded and continued to succeed. And not only that, but that once you were in a good place, you decided, hey, I think I want to help other women. So, you know, I just wanted to give people a background because it's really amazing, you know, the things that you do in your story. It's just really amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share about, just because you kind of said like, okay, you know, I came from a pretty rough place, and then all of a sudden there was kind of, I'm paraphrasing, but like all of a sudden there's this epiphany, right? Like, oh, I get it. I can continue to be, it's like you almost have like this moment of choice. I can continue to be a victim.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, because you had every reason.
Right.
Or I can take accountability for the choices I made because I have made choices. And that in turn can empower me to make different choices moving forward. I'm not stuck. How did you get to that point? Was there something that, do you remember like what led you up to that point?
Yeah. So there's a lot of, I guess, epiphany moments throughout my life. I call them light bulb moments because I was always like, whoa, I just thought of something, you know? So what really, so just to give everybody else a little bit further background, I went through childhood sexual abuse by my father as well. And I was taught to keep that a secret and don't talk about it. So my whole life, I didn't talk about it. I kept it a secret. And that was a very big secret that kind of like ate me alive all the time. And it always felt like this need, like I wanted to tell people, but then the guilt and shame just always overtook everything. And my life was basically, I do believe I was conditioned to be like guilt and shame for everything. And I still actually have, you know, a little bit of guilt issues that I'm still working through with like therapy and stuff like that, you know, because it's very deep rooted, because I was taught like telling the truth is not okay. You know, this is the family business. It stays in the family. Nobody needs to know our business. And you know, all these things. And so I just always remembered that. And I always went my whole life like, man, what kind of a daughter would I be if I put my dad in jail for the sexual abuse? Like, who does that? Who does that to their dad? And I had to actually reframe that thought, because it was like, finally, like after a lot of years of therapy, it finally just kind of dawned on me one day. It was like, wait, I was 7 years old. I didn't even know what was happening to me. That was my father. He should have been protecting me. Why am I like, what kind of a daughter would I be? What kind of a father touches his kid? And that finally changed like the whole way I looked at it and the way I looked at myself, and seeing that it finally, like, it wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. You know, I was a child and I should have been protected. And that was a really big thing. And that happens to survivors a lot. We are blamed for the things that happen to us sometimes. And it's not our fault, especially like when we're kids, right? Or even when we're going through domestic violence, like, oh, well, you should have just left, or oh, why can't you just leave? Or why do you still talk about those things that are so old? Because trauma is very deep rooted and it could last a lifetime, you know, and that's what people don't understand. So, and then there was another like really big moment in my life where it was my last abusive relationship. I was right around almost 30, if not 30 already. And we had gotten into a really bad fight, and basically I just had like a moment, because, you know, it was a really bad fight. I think I might have mentioned at the event. And then he basically blamed me for it. You know, it was this whole big drama. It was like so bad and so tumultuous. And then he was just like, so what do you have to say for yourself? And that was like a light bulb moment for me, where I was like, man, he doesn't respect me. He thinks I'm a joke. And I was like, my life isn't a joke to me. Like, I take my life very seriously, you know, and that's what finally made me be like, wow, like, you're doing a lot. Like, you're a good woman, you're a good mom, you're good to this man, you know, you pay your bills, you have a good job, you're going to college at that time. And I had so much going for me. I was like, if he can't see my value. There's tons of other men out here that would love to have me, you know? And I was just finally like, it took though for a lot of abuse to happen, especially a lot of like emotional abuse where he really like messed my mind up, for me to realize like, oh, I deserve better than this, you know, because my whole life I was treated like garbage and abused. So like when I got into these relationships with these men, it seemed normal because it was normal in my life. I was abused since I was a kid. So like when I met these men who were abusive, it just seemed normal. These were men that were just like my dad. And we all tend to go with people that, you know, are familiar to us, right? And we tend to find people that are either, you know, if you're a man or whatever, I guess it depends on like what you like, but like, you know, we tend to go for people who are kind of like our parents. And I didn't realize that either. So yeah, so there was a lot of epiphany moments, but it really just took for me to go through a lot of bad things, unfortunately, for me to be like, okay, I deserve better. And okay, now what? How am I going to change this around? How am I going to do better? How am I going to like get out of this debt? How am I going to, you know, do all these things? And it took a long time. It took a very long time of my life, like 10 years to get out of debt. It took like a long time to get to this point, but I think I needed all those things to happen in order for me to see like, hey, there is something better out there. You don't have to stay stuck here. This isn't it. There's more to your story, you know, and that's why I always say there's more to our stories. Every story has like a chapter, even the good ones and the bad ones, like they're all molding us into who we need to be. And a lot of the times, you know, we see these things as like downfalls or things that are meant to like kind of hold us in place, but sometimes they're there to teach us a lesson either about ourselves or about other people or some type of something, you know. And people always ask me if like if you had a choice, I guess, like if you can, you know, if you had the choice to not be abused, like, would you? And I was like, I wouldn't change anything about my story because all of it's led to what I'm doing now, to who I am today, you know, and I love who I am and I love what I do. And I know that this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. I know that all those downfalls had to happen for me to be able to help the women that I help now and coach and all the stuff that I'm doing. So, yeah, I own my story, you know, and I always tell people to own your story. It's your truth. Nobody could ever take that from you. They can try and they will try, but they can never take it from you. Your story is your story and they can tell you you're lying all you want. Just like me, you know, my family still said, oh, she's making it up. Why would I make it up? Why would I start a whole nonprofit and do all this work based off of a lie? Like, not saying it's impossible, but less likely, you know? So yeah, so hopefully that answers your question.
Did you feel like there was a period of time where you felt, okay, there needs to be a change here? Or was it more like you woke up and like, oh, okay, there has to be something now that changed all of this?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of moments that kind of led to that. I think I was tired of being broke. I was tired of being treated like garbage by not just romantic partners, but friendships. I had a lot of really toxic friendships, toxic family members, you know, like even a toxic workplace that I didn't even know was toxic till I started And Rise. I had no idea that such a thing existed about, you know, like even being abused at work. I was being abused at work as well. And not just that, but, you know, just the sexual harassment at my previous jobs were crazy. And now that I look back, it's like there's so many horrible things that happened to me at work that I just didn't say anything because I wanted my job and I was a single mom. I needed my job. I wasn't trying to ruffle anyone's feathers. So I just let them make me uncomfortable, you know, and I think that's an unfortunate thing that a lot of, if not most women experience in the workplace. So yeah, there was a lot of things, but I just was like, you know, I'm tired. I was just tired of being tired. I think that's what it was. I just got to this really low point where it was just like, I can't go any lower than this, right? Like rock bottom, like how can it get worse than this? And then I was like, I got to do something. And if I don't do it for myself, at least I'm doing it for my daughter. She has been and I know for a fact that God put her in my life to change it and to change me. She softened me and she helped me see that there is more to life and that you should do something more because there's this person that's counting on you now. She's watching everything that you're doing and everything that you're saying. And, you know, if you don't like who you are or you don't like what's going on, like, you know, make it better for her. So she really helped change my life, honestly.
You've mentioned God a couple times now. And
yes.
that's a segue into like spirituality. So would you say, has religion played a part in, you know, your life? Do you have a belief system that revolves around God or like anything other than what we can see with our physical eyes? You mentioned meditation too. So I just kind of want to see if there's something along those lines that you want to share.
Oh yeah, I've been through a really crazy spiritual / religious journey as well. So I grew up Christian, very, very, my parents were super religious growing up. And that was part of the abuse that I went through, was religious abuse as well. My dad was narcissistic, so he used to use religion against us, and everything was fear-based, right? You don't do this, God's going to be mad. You don't do that, you're going to go to hell. And so we were always scared of everything. So we used to try to be like perfect little ladies, you know? And so I was Christian my whole life until about a year and a half ago. I no longer, believe in organized religion. I don't try to deter anybody from their beliefs. If you're Christian, Catholic, whatever, go for it. But like, I just don't like when people try to tell me what I should be and how my beliefs are incorrect, because it's been a whole lifelong journey. I now believe that, organized religion is part of the issue in our society. I won't go too deep into it because I know a lot of people get like offended about that type of stuff, but it's just my journey and the things that I've noticed that the church does, and I just don't agree with a lot of the things that are taught. Um, I believe that a lot of us believe in a higher power, and that always gets misconstrued with religion, because it's like everyone's fighting to have the best and the right religion, and then it just you lose the bigger picture, which is God, right? Or whoever, your higher power. So now, like I said, I don't have any, I just call myself spiritual, like I'm a spiritual person, like I believe in spirituality. I still have a relationship with God, the same God that I've always prayed to my whole life, but I look at him in my own way. Like, I see a lot of churches, leading with fear, like I said, and I don't believe in that. And I know that there's some churches that aren't like that, but I think there's a lot of them that are, and I don't believe in that, because that's doing this work also, like, right, a lot of this is power and control. You keep people in fear to keep power and control. And then also, I think that sometimes religion keeps us from, it's another system that keeps us from thinking for ourselves, right? Following our own intuition, following what we feel, right? These gut feelings that, are God, in my opinion. And it just like, no, that's not what the Bible says. This book that who knows who wrote, how long ago, and how many times it's been retranslated, right? We don't even know if that's really what it is. So that's another reason why I don't believe in that. So yeah, so I'm big into meditation. I'm big on intuition and, following what you feel, because I do somatic work too. It's about body awareness, feeling what's in your body. The body speaks before the mind can even process what's happening. And that's something that I find so interesting about this work, is like, we're not taught to listen to our bodies, and our body is just like, gives us so many signals, but we ignore it because we're just like, oh, that's weird, or that's a coincidence, or whatever, but there's the reason that you're getting these messages, right? Whether there's signals, or like you get even a thought or a word, or you hear something and you think, oh, that's weird, but that's your like intuition, and that's like a higher power. And I also didn't believe in like saints and like all these goddesses and stuff like that, before, because I was taught in my religion that, you only have the one God and Jesus, and that's it, and everything else is like, um idolism, I guess, right? And so now I do believe in, like, I have God. I pray to my ancestors as well, because I believe I'm being protected by angels and ancestors and my spirit guides, So I feel like I'm like evolving and believing in a lot more things than what I was originally taught to, right? So yeah, so that's kind of how my journey has been, from like going from organized religion to kind of just creating what I believe, what feels right with me, honestly. I think that's the biggest thing. And it's been amazing, because there was a lot of years and a lot of times where I was in the church and I never felt right. I could never find the right church. It never felt good. I always thought the people were like, I just didn't vibe with them. And then when I started doing this, it just felt perfect. And I was like, this is like what I've been waiting for my whole life, but I was always taught that religion, you have to find the right one. You have to find the right one. You have to find the right church. And so even before I started doing this, I was trying to find the right church. And every church I would go to, it wouldn't fit. And I'm like, I didn't like this one. I didn't like that one. I'm like, why can't I find like my place? And now I know that I wasn't able to find my place because I wasn't supposed to be in that. I was supposed to do what I'm doing now. So, yeah.
Yes, you're speaking our language. You're in the right place. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. So, I mean, yeah, we can ruffle feathers here. It's fine.
Good.
Very respectful of people who believe in their religion and go to church. No problem. If it works for you, great. Yeah, but I agree with 100% of what you're saying. I do also believe that the religion keeps people boxed in, and that there's a lot of gatekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody should have access to a higher power. You can call it higher power, self, source, whatever,
Right.
God, whatever you want.
Yep.
But everyone has equal access and there's no hierarchy here.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you don't have to get into it, but like, do you feel like, this was like all these things that happened kind of led to like a spiritual awakening and it broke you out
Absolutely.
of the religion piece?
Yes, absolutely. It was just so deeply ingrained in me, and I felt guilt because, like I mentioned, I still have a little bit of guilt issues. So I felt this guilt like, oh, I can't, even look at like witchcraft books or whatever because that's bad. And, I was taught my whole life witchcraft is terrible. And now I'm kind of delving into that as well, not fully, but like even reading oracle cards and like tarot cards, I was always taught that that's witchcraft, that's evil. So I was always scared to touch it or scared to like delve into it. And now I like do it all the time and I love it. And it brings me a lot of peace and comfort. I just really believe that that's what I'm about now. It's like the things that bring me peace and comfort that are healthy, right? Like if it's an oracle card, or if it's going, like to a convention for like mind, body, spirit, whatever, like do what brings you joy because life is so short. And too short to be sitting here and just like wondering of like, oh well, I really want to try this but my religion says I can, or my parents said I can, or all these people around me saying what I can and can't do, and we're so conditioned to just like doing what everybody else wants us to do instead of following our gut or following our dreams, and I also believe that that's how And Rise was placed on my heart because it was a dream. It was something that was, like I went to this one event and I was so incredibly inspired. I'd never been to an event like that before. And I was like, I want to do an event like that. I want to tell people about my story of like how I was a single mom and how I like started investing in real estate and all these things. I really want to share that with people. So that's what I did. It was just something I started out of my living room. It was for fun, it was just a passion. And then I was like, as soon as I started doing it, I like just fell in love with it. And I was like, I got to figure out how to do this full time, and that's what I did. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, I just knew that there was something bigger for me. I also had gotten overlooked at work a lot for promotions and raises, and they kept telling me I wasn't ready or they didn't have the budget for a raise, but they were having me do all the work with my colleagues. My colleagues were making like $10,000-$20,000 more than me, and they just, and I was trying to work my way up the corporate ladder, but now I know that didn't work out because I was supposed to do this, and if I would have worked my way up the corporate ladder, I would have just kept trying and trying. And then finally one day I was like, you know what? If these people can't see my worth, I know I have something inside of me. I could feel it. I didn't know how to explain it, but like I knew that there was something bigger. And then I quit my full-time job and, I started doing this, and it's been great ever since. We're thriving, we're growing. And I know that was kind of my reward for listening because, right, we don't really listen to our intuition because we're like, oh, but what am I going to do about a paycheck? Because that was my same. I didn't quit for a while because I was so scared. Like I'd never been an entrepreneur before. I'd always been a W-2 employee. I'd always, gotten a paycheck every 2 weeks or whatever. So like it was scary to know like I was going into this new realm and I didn't know when the next paycheck was coming or when I'd ever get paid, even if I was going to make money or not. And so it's scary, but I took a risk because I felt it inside, like you're meant to do something bigger. And it's, I've been taken care of ever since. I have a nonprofit. We're not out here making money and getting rich out here, but like I'm doing the right thing. This is what I'm being led to do. So I've been provided for beyond what I could even have like dreamed of, honestly. So I think that we do get rewarded when we sometimes take the long route as opposed to the shortcut. I also think that the way I'm a visual person, so the way I always envisioned it was, light at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel could be super, super far away, but you might see that little bit of light, and it might take you a long time to get there. But that's, in my opinion, that's God, your higher power, whatever source, and it's trying to guide you to the light. But sometimes the darkness is just right here, super close. So we'll just stick to what we know, So like I believe that I followed the light, and it took me forever to get here, but here I am, and now I'm fully in the light, and it's an amazing thing, Sometimes it takes a while to get there, but it definitely can be possible to get there. And it's a really beautiful place to be in. And now that I'm in the spirituality phase, not phase, but, the thing that feels right, I feel like everything else is just also falling into place for me too, which is really, really cool to see. And I'm big on synchronicities too. Like there's no such thing as coincidence. There's no such thing that I just met you at that event and we're just, here doing a pod. It's not a coincidence. I believe that everything, we're meant to connect with everyone for a reason, even if it's one time, for whatever reason it might be, but everything's connected, everything's energy. There's so much stuff that I don't think we're taught in schools. We're just taught to kind of, and I think a lot of the systems that we are in are like taught to be sheep, taught to listen to other people, don't think for yourselves. We need you to be brain slaves, and everything else is a lie, And so that's why I love talking about this stuff, because I think it's so important for people to realize that we have been kind of brainwashed and trained to be specific type of people. And that's only for the benefit of some, not all,
I think it's so brave of you, and actually taking the leap of faith and going in the direction your intuition is telling you. It's incredible. Do you have any labels when it comes to spirituality?
Not really. I think some people would label me as like a light worker and path, like, all those things. I don't really label myself as anything. I just say that I'm like a spiritual person, because I think I'm still trying to figure out what my exact label is. But I think I'm a little bit of everything. I think I can be a little bit psychic. Sometimes too. I know that we are all, like, that's something that I'm really in the process of learning, is to like use more of my psychic abilities and stuff like that, because I think we're all gifted with it. We just don't know how to tap into it, and that's what I'm currently working on. I just find it like so fascinating the more I learn about everything, and the more it feels right and more in tune with like who I am.
When we were at the event, you mentioned Reiki. Do you still practice it, or is that something that you kind of started dabbling in and branched off into other things?
Yeah, I still do Reiki. I love doing Reiki. I think I got certified like 2 years ago. So we've done a lot of like sound bath and Reiki events where we'll have somebody doing the sound bowls and stuff, and then I'll be performing Reiki on people. And I love Reiki because, one, it's relaxing for me. And two, I love the feedback that I get from people when I'm done with working on them. And then they tell me like, oh, I felt this, or I saw that, or I saw these colors, and just hearing their feedback, or like, even hearing like, I've heard that, oh, even though I knew you weren't there anymore, I could still feel your hands on me, and just the energy. And I was just like, oh, that's so cool. So I really enjoy doing it. I find it very like therapeutic for myself. But yeah, I still do it. I am looking at adding a little bit more of those offerings for And Rise clients, and trying to also figure out a place where I can do like the Reiki ad and kind of do one-to-ones with people. So I'm still working through that. But yeah, I love doing it. And I think I love doing it too, because I think when I started doing it, I found out that I was pretty good at it, which of course made me like it even more, because I was like, oh, I think I'm good at this. Because I think there's a lot of people that when they start, they're like, I don't know if this is working. I did think that too. I was like, placing my hands on people, and I was like, I don't know if it's working at all. And now I know it's like all about intention, and my intention is always, is always good. So I feel like a lot more confident when I do it now, as opposed to when I first started. I think we all feel like that when you start something new, though.
For people that don't know about Reiki, do you want to give just a little explanation of what your understanding of Reiki is and how you practice it?
Yeah, sure. So Reiki is basically like energy healing. Everybody has chakras, right? So it helps to clear your blocked chakras. So let's say your throat is blocked, right, and you're like not able to speak your truth. We can go and work through your throat chakra, or it could also be for helping with releasing anxiety, or even physical pain in the body. So if you're feeling physical pain somewhere, we can work on that and try to release what's going on there, because sometimes it's not even like anything physical. Sometimes it's just trapped energy in those spaces. And again, we're not taught these things about our bodies. And that's why I started somatic experiencing as well, because somatic experiencing is not exactly Reiki, but it helps with body awareness. And especially because we work with survivors, and a lot of people have dissociated from their bodies, meaning they're kind of like they're there, but they're not physically present in their body. So helping people with like breath work, and helping them to just like realize when something's coming up, is there an emotion attached to that? How can we work through that in a really gentle way? And then by the end, it's like the hope is that like, okay, I'm feeling really anxious right now. Now I know that I'm anxious. Okay, what's causing me anxiety? Is it because I'm upset because of something that happened last night, and I'm feeling it in my heart, or I'm feeling it in my back? How do I make a subtle movement to kind of work through that and just move it around, move the energy around, stuff like that. It's very simple. Yeah, it's not simple sometimes. I just think it's really important because a lot of the times we're not really taught to listen to our bodies, and that our body can and does give us signals. We just tend to kind of be like, oh, that's weird, or we don't really know that it's something else, something deeper. And a lot of people also don't know that trauma does physically get stored in the body when we don't process it, same as me. So that's why there's a lot of people with chronic pain, chronic illness, diseases come from, stored trauma. Me, I get migraines still, that comes from, I know a lot of like stored and repressed trauma that I had. So that's why body work is so important, and Reiki and, all these different things that doctors don't really do for people. You know what I mean?
For somebody that knows they have a lot of trauma, where do you recommend them to start? Is it with the somatic healing or?
Yeah, I would recommend seeing a licensed counselor therapist to work through that. I think that that's really, really important but talk therapy doesn't work for everyone. I'm very aware of that. I would say majority of people it does work, but there's a small percentage of people that does nothing for them. So for those people, I would say start with like art therapy or meditation, yoga, something to help release like what's going on. I still think talking with a professional is very, very important though, because that's what's helped me immensely. I still see a counselor on a weekly basis, not because anything's like majorly wrong. It's just my way of taking care of myself. It's my self-care. And I do believe that it makes me a better person. So yeah, I would start with therapy, and then I would highly recommend going to support groups, which, my nonprofit offers. It's really healing to be in spaces with other people who get it and who aren't blaming you or who aren't victim shaming, or saying, oh, why don't you just leave? Or why are you still talking about that? It happened 50 years ago. Like, what's wrong with you? So that's a space where you just get to talk about what's going on. And it's very helpful for these women that have maybe never been validated in their life, say somebody to tell them, hey, I'm sorry that happened to you. That was really messed up. Like, but you're really strong, and you should just see the looks on their faces. It really is helpful to just be acknowledged and like, hey, your experience is real and that was really messed up. Like, sorry that happened to you. And just hearing those words can make such a difference, because there's so many times where people don't believe us, or they're like, oh, just shut up. Who cares? Why are you still talking about that? That happens like every day. I would start with talk therapy, support groups, and then seeing how else you can, be present in the moment. Mindfulness, meditation. We don't breathe a lot. Sometimes when we're anxious and have a lot of stuff going on, we tend to hold our breath, and that adds to anxiety and, like panic attacks and stuff like that. So yeah, being present and like learning to breathe, like that's been a game changer for me. Meditation has been a huge, huge piece of my healing journey. And I wish I would have found it a long time ago, but I just started about like a year and a half ago. And it's been, like I said, it's helped me in a lot of different ways. So I highly recommend that too.
You mentioned something earlier that happened a year and a half ago also. Was that when you started your organization?
No, I started the organization in 2020. Yeah, so we're almost 5 years in July. It'll be our 5-year anniversary. But I think a year and a half ago was when I fell away from organized religion. I think that's what I said. Yeah.
Okay, that's what it was.
Which all goes with everything anyway.
Do you want to talk about your organization and Rise, like what you do?
Sure. So we're And Rise. The And means your story isn't over yet. There's more to tell, and the Rise means rising above any adversities that you have faced. So we do offer free mental health services and wraparound support. So we offer free counseling for women in Illinois. It could be any woman or girl. She doesn't have to have insurance. We don't ask for immigration status. All of our counselors speak multiple languages. They're also all BIPOC, and they also do in-person in Chicago and virtual as well. So we're trying to make it as accessible as possible to anyone. You don't have to be a trauma survivor. It could just be any woman that maybe doesn't have insurance, is underinsured, doesn't have the money, has never tried therapy before, and is interested or curious. We just want to really like normalize mental health, and you don't have to have trauma or any crazy thing going on to go see somebody and talk through what's happening or what has happened in the past. And then we have 11 support groups that we offer weekly. We do all different topics like sexual abuse, domestic abuse, emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse. We have a chronic pain, chronic illness, and medical trauma group. We have a teen girl group. We have a group about boundaries, and then we have 3 groups that are just general trauma and abuse. It could be anything. You could talk about anything in that one. And then we have our wraparound services. So we offer financial education workshops and coaching. We do career development services. So we help with like resumes and mock interviewing skills. We also have a women's book club where we get together and read a self-help book together. So this time around, we're reading The Body Keeps the Score, which is a really, popular one. And we also do events. So we have like our educational side of our events, which are always free. So we do order protection workshops, child support and custody and visitation, because a lot of the women we work with are survivors. A lot of them are either co-parenting with, an abuser, or they're fighting their abuser in court. So that's just for us to teach them, educate them about their rights, and so that they, know what they're doing as they're going through the process. And then we have like our inspirational women empowerment side. So we do like the reiki and the sound bath meditations. We've done goal setting, vision boards. I'm huge on inner child work. So I do a lot of inner child, like either journaling events or inner child meditations. We've done self-defense classes, boudoir photo shoots, like body positivity photo shoots. We've done a ton of different events throughout the years. And I think that's what we're really known for, is like the unique events that we put on for women. And we really listen to the ladies that are in our community and what they want. And then we put on events based on what they say that they need. And then lastly, we have our consent workshops through Chicago Public Schools. We work with teen girls and boys to teach them about consent and healthy relationships and recognizing red flags and, green flags even, and what consent is, what it isn't, and stuff like that. So those are all the services we offer. We do a lot. And honestly, a lot of those are based on my story of being a survivor, on all the things that I never received that I needed, going through financial abuse. I needed help with that, which is why we offer the financial services. And some ladies have to leave their lives and uproot, and sometimes they need to like get another job. So that's where the career services help. And all the things that we offer are just to help women as they're kind of like navigating the after of going through abuse and stuff like that.
That's incredible. And I know, like, by you talking about this is changing people's lives and women's life. Like, probably going from being stuck in a place and just getting some tools to help you with you can say, the energy or the frequency as well. It's just like amazing. I'm
Thank you.
speechless.
Oh, thank you. No, I love
Yeah.
it. Like I said, this wasn't a coincidence. This was like God driven. The way I explain it, I'm like, he gave me a pretty little present in a box, and he put on my lap and he said, figure it out. I figured it out, and I know that this is not even what I'm supposed to do. I know that there's something bigger that I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know what it is at this moment, but I just know in my gut, like, yeah, you're supposed to be doing something even bigger than this, but this is just like to get me started. So that's really cool too.
That's a lot of services. I'm trying to remember like all the ones you said. So I'm gonna have to probably go on your website and take a look through all of them. But one of them actually, you said medical trauma, like
chronic pain, chronic illness, and medical trauma. That's one of the support groups we offer.
What's included in that medical trauma, if you don't mind explaining?
Yeah. So a lot of the ladies, and it's not just the ladies that come to our group. This has been statistically proven that women in the healthcare industry, when we go into the healthcare industry, we're not treated the same way as men. We're always taught that, or doctors tell us a lot, that it's just in your head. You're being too emotional, right? So there will be something seriously wrong. I've met so many women that have like had stuff happening, and the doctor tells them that, or they gave them random pills just to shut them up, and then that doesn't work, or it makes it worse, or they tell them that, it's in your head, you're fine, and then something actually huge does happen. They were sick, something big happened, and now they have all this trauma because nobody in the medical field believes them when they're telling them they're sick or they don't feel well. So that's really where that group came from. We started that group based on demand because it kept coming up in a lot of our other support groups, and they're like, can you start a group just for chronic pain, chronic illness, and medical trauma? And I was like, okay. So, and that's what we do. We really listen to the girls. We pay attention to what topics come up a lot in our groups, and then that's how we create a new group, through that. So yeah, and unfortunately it happens to women quite a bit, where they're not believed, or they're just like, oh, you're, women, we are so emotional, it's just in her head, and it's not. A lot of the times it really is something, but the doctors just don't do their due diligence and do, I just think too, it's just the way it is, right? You're only have 15 minutes with your doctor now, and then if you go past the 15 minutes, they're like, oh, I don't have time for this, So yeah, we see that happen quite a bit, which is why we started that group.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, we were just we interviewed a couple of women who were all talking about, well, one was perimenopause and the other one was talking just about like the menstrual cycle and like meeting our needs when we're menstruating. And it's just amazing because the connection here is everybody, including yourself, is saying basically we have to listen to our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And our bodies are trying to tell us something, and sometimes we don't listen, and then we ignore things, or maybe they exacerbate, right? And then we wind up in an ER, or we wind up seeing a medical professional who then further dismisses and says it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Forget it, you're fine. So I mean, there's something to this, right? So like, how do we honor our bodies? How do we pay more attention? And how do we bring the focus back to ourselves?
Yeah. It's so important. That's why I'm always telling people, listen to your body, you trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. There's no reason why it just pops up out of nowhere. Like there's a reason for everything, and something feels wrong, something feels off, and then go get a second opinion. If your doctor says, hey, nothing's wrong with you, and you still feel something, go get a second opinion. That person says no, go, keep finding until you, not saying that we're trying to find something wrong, right? But like, if you know something's wrong, you're more than likely something is. I've had this lady that came, she was a regular, she was coming for a while. She had something going on with her IUD, and they kept telling her, oh, you're fine. And it turned out that it was like attached to her, I don't know what. And she had to she actually left the US to go to her country because it was cheaper to fly to her country and get the procedure than to do it here, which she would have had to pay like $10,000 for. So it cost her less to fly to another country and get it done than do it here, which is another barrier for people here, right? Like if you can't afford a procedure, then what happens? They just let you die. Like they do. It's really sad, but that's the way our healthcare system is set up here. It's not good unless you have like Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO, which most of us don't. Most people don't have that, So anyway, it's really upsetting, and it's really crazy to hear the stories that we hear in that group. I was like shocked when I heard. I was like, oh my God, it's a lot. And then you hear so many different types of stories of the different things that are happening, the different things that they're being told, or the run around with insurance, stuff like that. So there's just a lot of other things on top of just like the feeling sick and not being believed, that also happens to the ladies that go to that group.
You mentioned something earlier about your, like, telling your story and the victim blaming that happens. I don't know if I shared this with you, but I'm also a therapist, and I have, in many years, I've worked with young girls and women, and unfortunately, the story is almost always the same. It's the silence. It's the not speaking up or feeling like you can't really speak out about this.
Yeah.
I know this is kind of a big ask, but what would be like your advice from maybe any woman, young girl, or listening to this who maybe is going through abuse or has gone through abuse, and just maybe is in a place where they don't know what to do? What would you say to that person?
So I believe in giving survivors choices. So I'm not going to be like, oh, you should do A, B, and C. If you really, I think there's a lot of people that know that also our justice system is very flawed. So they're scared to go through that because they think they're going to get re-traumatized, which they more than likely will. I just went through the system not that long ago. And it was traumatic for me, even being somebody that talks about this all the time. But I personally do believe in holding people accountable. I kind of wish I would have done something when I was younger, but I also know that there's nothing I could have done when I was younger because I was 7 years old. But anyway, no regrets though. But just to give you guys a little story, I pressed charges against my dad at the end of 2023 for my childhood sexual abuse. So this is 30 years after the fact, because in the state of Illinois, the statutes of limitations don't apply to sexual abuse or sexual assault. So we got lucky in that sense. So me and my twin sister, we took him, and he was locked up for almost a year and a half. Unfortunately, both lost our trials because it was the burden of proof, even though we did have proof. But I personally believe my judge was very biased. He was a jerk. I didn't like him. And it wasn't just because of like him finding my dad not guilty. He said some very uneducated things to me during my trial. The way he handled this case was really upsetting. And me being somebody that does this for a living, like I knew that he was wrong. So that was traumatic. But again, and even though it didn't end up the way I wanted it to, which was him being locked up for the rest of his life, I disrupted his life for a year and a half. Now it's on his record that he spent a year and a half for aggravated child sexual abuse. He'll never find a job again, a decent job. I've put him on blast on TikTok and like social media, so the world knows who he is. I do believe in holding people accountable, and the reason I say that is because the only people who benefit from our silence are our oppressors and our abusers. We think that, you know, like we're doing something, or maybe it's embarrassing, right? But like it's not your guilt and shame to hold. And that was a big piece for me. I think I mentioned that towards the beginning of the podcast, where like I felt all this shame of like, what kind of a daughter would I be? And it's like, no, like what kind of a dad does that to his kids? Like, no, you got to change the narrative of like, you didn't do anything wrong. They did something wrong. And the world needs to know that they're out here doing this. And that was a big reason why I did it, because I was like, if he did it to his own daughters, best believe he's not going to have a problem doing it to women he doesn't know or care about. So I was hoping that like we could prevent him from doing it to other people, you know? So again, it's always a survivor's choice. Some of them may choose to press charges. Some of them may choose not to, and that's totally okay as long as you're at peace with it. But yeah, I know for me personally, I just felt a very big calling, a gut intuition to do this. And I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, but I was like, I trust in God. I trust that this was placed on my heart for a reason. I trust that it's going to work out the way it's supposed to. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way we want it to, but just because it's not the way we want it to doesn't mean that's not the way it's supposed to be, you know? And I know I was very defeated after I lost my case. It took me like a month and a half to bounce back. I was like in a little slump and depression after that. But now I'm like, now it's a bigger fuel to my fire. Now I'm going to keep doing this work, and I'm going to do it on a bigger scale, you know, and that's just what keeps me like going, you know? So even if you lose your case, even if it doesn't go the way you wanted it to, just know that you're brave for speaking up. It takes a lot to speak up. It takes a lot to be interviewed in a courtroom full of people you don't know, and, you know, talking about your physical trauma that has happened to you, you know. And what the judge said to me was like, I made a TikTok video about it, but like he basically victim blamed me in my own like hearing. And I was just like, wow. And another thing that I've learned in doing this work is that judges and attorneys don't have to take any type of training on domestic violence or sexual assault or sexual abuse. Even though they're making judgments on this, they take zero training, which explains of why so many perpetrators get to walk free. And a lot of people don't know this, that our system is strategically set up this way. None of it's an accident. It's all done on purpose, you know, because I do believe that the perpetrators are the ones making the laws, and that's why they protect their own. And that's why this continues to happen to so many people, because the consequences are so minimal. And it's just like, oh, well, I'm only going to get 6 months for, you know, assaulting this person. No biggie. You know, like it's crazy how much perpetrators get away with when it comes to like abuse of, you know, not just women, abuse of anyone, honestly. So yeah.
Wow, that's terrible. And the fact that they can get away with it, or the knowledge behind it, because when it comes to sexual abuse, violence, and there is so much colors in between, or what do you say, like different levels, different
Yeah.
degrees of it. And
Mm-hmm.
I know it's different in the US than it is here. I don't know if they teach or like learn about it when they go to school, but I know a lot of women in Norway,
Mm-hmm.
they're fighting for a law that says you have to say yes to sleep with somebody for it not to be sexual abuse. Because
Mm-hmm.
right now, we don't have a law that says that you have to clearly say yes. So there's a lot of cases that get shut down because there hasn't been a clear no. But
Mm-hmm.
what about all the girls if they are not able to say no, if
Exactly.
they're not,
And that's why
conscious enough, or
yeah, that's true also too. Yeah, like a lot of people get drugged, unfortunately, and a lot of people, there's a lot of things that happen to the body when it's going through something traumatic, right? It's like fight or flight. You're either fighting back or you're I don't know, you're freezing or fawning, right? Like I'm a freezer. I can't. It depends on the situation, but I can't always fight back. I just freeze and I don't know what to say, right? Or I go blank. So like sometimes that's people's bodily responses, and that's also what the judge told me in my case. There's no way you could have been 7 years old and not screamed. How can you tell me that when that's literally what happened? I did not scream because I was terrified that he was going to get mad or do something, you know? So like, you can't tell somebody how they would react based on what you think you would have done, like that's so messed up to even tell anybody, like he also just like kind of downplayed almost like my experience didn't happen because it didn't happen the way he thought it should have, and there's a lot, everybody reacts completely differently, and it could be the same exact situation and you'll have 50 different ways that people respond to it, because everyone's different in how they respond to something crazy that's happening to them, and that's what these people, I think they do know, but they don't want to admit it even,
Yeah, we also forgot to mention, Jennifer, sorry, Stina's in Norway.
Oh, okay, I figured.
It's a totally different healthcare system, criminal system, legal system, but yes, Stina, so that's how it is here, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's really messed up here. Unfortunately.
What are your next steps, Jennifer? Do you want to share, like, what do you said, well, Anne Rise is such a big part of your life right now, and you're dabbling in all this spiritual stuff, which is so cool. Do you have anything that you're excited about that you want to try next, or either spiritually or professionally or even personally?
Yeah, so I stopped coaching I stopped coaching with like private clients like almost 2 years ago because I just got very overwhelmed because I was trying to run And Rise and my other coaching practice. But I'm actually in the process of putting something together for a 6-month program that includes everything that I do: Reiki, somatic work, journaling, different things that I've done in my journey. So I'm in the process of putting that together, and I'm going to start like a group coaching program pretty soon. And also I've been doing a lot more keynotes. So I think that's kind of an avenue I'm kind of delving more into, and talking just about my story and, doing motivational speaking. I'm also in the process of writing a book. So I'm doing that as well. So I have a lot of things that I'm working on in the background aside from And Rise that I'm looking to accomplish. I have a lot of personal accomplishments, and then I just want to keep like delving into spirituality and see how I can also teach people about that. Another thing that I am thinking about doing, coming from like being Mexican, right? We have like that indigenous background, and our ancestors knew of all these spirituality ways to heal and like different medicines, right, that are all herbal and natural. And I want to like delve into that and teach, Latinos how to like go back to our roots of like this instead of organized religion, because I like have learned also too, like, that wasn't our religion. It was like colonialism and all that stuff that taught us to be Catholic and Christian and all that stuff. And it's like, let's go back to our roots of what is ingrained in us, really, in our blood, and I want to teach how to go back to that. So that's something else that I want to do in the future as well.
That's so exciting. Let us know when you're done with the book.
Yes, I will. We're still editing. We're still in the process. But yeah, I'm excited because it's basically a memoir about my life, but like a little bit different than what a normal memoir would be. So yeah, I will let you guys know that.
Yeah, nice. Do you have any recommendation when it comes to books or podcasts?
Do you guys know who Sonia Choquette is? I love her. I just recently discovered her not that long ago either, and I've been reading her books like crazy, and she also has a podcast too, I believe. I just think she's such a great teacher, and the way she teaches about spirituality and intuition, it's like, yeah, so that's definitely somebody I follow in the sense of like spirituality. But I've read a lot of other books. I just can't think of it. She's the first person that came to my to my mind. She's really, really like, I just love the way she tells stories too. And then I started following her like on social media, and even when her videos pop up, it's just like always, like, she has really great content, honestly.
It's a dream of ours to get her on the show.
Oh yeah, that'd be amazing.
Come and talk to us.
Let me know. Yeah, that would be awesome. Maybe if I meet her, I'll tell her about you guys too.
Yes,
be on your podcast.
Jennifer, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you and just having this conversation. It's been so much fun. Thank you so much for sharing everything and for bringing yourself to this world, for being here, and for doing all the work that you're doing. Is there anything else that you want to share before we let you go?
Yeah, just if anyone's interested in, connecting with me or learning more about And Rise or even receiving our services, we're always looking for volunteers and, different supporters, donors, and things like that. Visit our website, www.womenrisechicago.org, or you can add us on TikTok and Instagram. Our Instagram is and_rise___. TikTok is and_rise__. And then you can find us on Facebook at Women Rise Chicago.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Vision Chat. You can find more about us at visionofprofoundhealing.com, where we offer readings, courses, and classes.